Hey, greetings, LA aliens or Lollians or whatever we are. We're back with Law and Legitimacy. It's Friday. Yeah. We made it past Hump Day. We made it past Thursday. And now we're on Friday, which means sometime by sunset, we'll be into the weekend, which for those of you who get weekends off, it's a great thing. For those of us who work 7 days a week, we'll just work on something else. But anyhow, happy Friday.
Amen.
Happy Friday. Speaking about doing the same old thing all the time, you know, the Donald is back in the news, but of course I realize the moment that escaped my lips that he's never really out of the news. But the New York Appellate Court has reinstated Judge Engoron's gag order. The Donald is now barred as a matter of law from speaking hostily about the judge and or his court staff. So the judge and his unsworn judge Allison Greenfield are now immune from public criticism by Donald. Now, whether he obeys that order remains to be seen. He's twice been fined $5,000 by Judge Engoron for violating it, but I think he is likely to obey it because he's adopted a new and quite frankly shameful and disturbing tack. The Donald is now attacking Engoron's wife. And you know, I just sort of think spouses are out of limits and out of bounds. If you've got a beef with the judge, take it up with him. If you've got a beef with the woman who sits on the bench with him and helps him decide the case, take it up with him. But leave the families out of it. So apparently, the Donald has been attacking a woman who posts, virulent anti-Trump stuff on then Twitter, now X, and of course, Judge Engoron's wife says it ain't me. It's somebody else. And so as I'm reading this story, I'm thinking, as crazy
go at it. Just tell me what happened.
What was that?
That was the DealBook Summit stuff. Sorry, I was.
No, I thought it was Judge Engoron coming in, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, you sound like a high nasally interview at the DealBook Summit talking to Elon Musk, a guy trying to pretend to be much smarter than they are, insightful, witty, and urbane, speaking to one of the most influential people on earth, throwing him softballs and having them hit out of the park so hard that you can't even see where the ball landed, and trying to decide what sport we're playing.
That is such an amazing summary of what happened.
No, but so the Donald has taken a shameful tack, and he's going after Engoron's wife, and it made me wonder: did a Donald Trump supporter create the image of Engoron's wife so that Donald would have a straw person to attack? But here's what I think is going to happen: if the Donald's out there talking trash about Engoron's wife, and it's not Engoron's wife, and they put Trump on notice that it's not Engoron's wife, and he continues talking about Engoron's wife, I think the Donald's going to find himself on the receiving end of another defamation claim. And then he's going to say, wait, this is another attack on my First Amendment rights. No, it's not, Donald. Every now and then there are lines worth observing. And in civil society, there are minimal conditions of what we expect from one another to live decently. And one is that we don't gratuitously lie about one another to the detriment of our reputations. So, Donald, knock off the family attacks. If you want to show us that you got a pair, keep talking about Judge Engoron and his clerk. Let the judge sanction you and then take the appeal and become a showcase. But don't go after the low-hanging fruit. I mean, what's next, Donald? You're going to go after Judge Engoron's children, or perhaps the unborn children, or you're going to start attacking, crippled people because they chose their wheelchairs and didn't believe in the miracle of themselves by picking up their beds and walking. Shame on you, Mr. Trump.
Dawn says on Rumble, good morning, Dawn. Good morning, Jackson. Good morning. It's me again in the cloud. Dawn says his wife posted pictures of Trump in prison. Leave the poor woman alone. It wasn't his wife, ? So I'm not sure, Dawn, if you want to clarify what you're saying, and we can kind of look into whether there was some, whether turnabout is fair play.
I think what happened is they're under an account under Engoron's name. Donald isn't going to the White House. Donald's not going to the White House. He's going to the big house. And then there was a picture or a GIF of him in a prison suit. And she's claiming, Ms. Engoron, that she didn't post that. And I think that's where the dispute lies. And we'll find out. So the gag order is back, and Donald's team is back in court in Atlanta today. There'll be interesting arguments again on that favorite amendment of ours, the First Amendment. What a hideous drawing of Donald. I mean,
well, listen to this about the just going back to the Manhattan case. Judge Engoron says, quote, I want to make sure all counsel are aware that this morning the Appellate Division First Department issued a decision vacating the stay on the 2 gag orders that I imposed earlier on in this case. The New York Sun reports that Judge Engoron then said that he intends to, quote, enforce the gag orders rigorously and vigorously, to which One of Trump's legal counsel responded. Chris Kise responds, "We're aware. It's a tragic day for the rule of law."
I think where is this article from? I mean, they've got the glam shot of
New York Sun. New York Sun.
they've got the glam shot of his clerk, and there's Donald looking like he sat on a squeaky toy, and that's what you heard in the background, by the way. It was a squeaky toy. My dog is fit to be tied this morning. She's gnawing on my ankles, getting ready to go outside, giving new meaning to the term ankle biter. Athena, dear, chill. We will go out later. Lie down. Those of you who have border collies recognize my tone. It's the tone I have to use 5,621 times per day while interacting with my overdriven dog. But anyhow, Donald, lay off the family. It's unbecoming. In Atlanta, his legal team will be appearing in front of with Fani Willis's team to address First Amendment issues as well. They're making another run at attempting to dismiss the action against Trump. The claim that he and others were involved in election interference in Georgia by their utterances about the Georgia electoral process being broken and fraudulent. That motion will be denied. Again, those of you who are new to the law or new to the show, need to hear that the First Amendment doesn't permit you to say just anything, anytime, anywhere to anyone. There are exceptions to freedom of speech, and one is if you are involved in criminal activity. Now, the line to be drawn in this case is a very, very difficult line. At what point, what distinguishes political advocacy from criminal conspiracy? And I think that's what's going to be tested in the Georgia case. And candidly, I'm researching this issue because it is pertinent in part to the Proud Boys appeal that I'll be taking on behalf of Joe Biggs and Ethan, not Ethan Nordine, Zachary Rell in the federal courts in the District of Columbia. Political speech, and it's pertinent to the issues we framed in Owen Schroyer's case, which is now before the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Political speech is protected speech. Political, but utterances intended to plan or incite a person to commit a crime is not protected. And, our law has yet to have a bright line test that says that in order to consider what would otherwise be political speech as evidence of a crime, the person offering the evidence has to do something. And that is a gap in the law that will be addressed either in the Trump case, the Schroyer case, the Proud Boys case, or a related case, because as the law currently stands, prosecutors are free to take, it's jalapeno Jack. Prosecutors are free to take otherwise protected speech and call it circumstantial evidence of criminal intent. And the problem with that analysis is it gives to the prosecutor the ability to basically prosecute protected speech if they disagree with the objective by characterizing the objective as a crime. Troubling issue. I think in the Georgia case, the judge will deny the motion to dismiss. Basically, what he will say is this is a context-driven decision that will have to be made at the time of trial while considering the evidence as a whole in its totality. And that's the way it often goes in trial work. An issue may be apparent from the beginning of the case, but you need a context to help decide it. So don't expect big fireworks on that. I think motion to dismiss denied. In the afternoon, I gather the parties will argue once again on the timing of the trial. Fani is pressing for. I know she wants it pronounced Fani, but and I once again issue the Fani challenge. Fani, drop 75 pounds, and we'll call you Fani. But until you do, you're Fani. And okay, I've got a fat bias. Well, I do. Yeah, you're not going to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I don't want you auditioning as a Victoria's Secrets model. I want you in the gym, hitting the weights and staying out of those Twinkies in the middle of the night. Funny.
This is another interesting story. I don't know if you saw this, Norm, from the New York Sun. And again, A.R. Hoffman has done incredible reporting on this stuff. We're about 10 days behind on this one. But it appears as though Trump has filed a motion to the judge in Atlanta asking that Fani Willis contact special counsel Jack Smith with, quote, the goal of obtaining evidentiary materials that could then be shared via discovery with the legal team defending Mr. Trump in Georgia. And the reason, therefore, Norm, is that apparently Trump is now trying to draw a distinction between the special counsel's case against Mr. Trump, basically it's him alone that was responsible for trying to overturn the 2020 election, while Fannie Willis has what they call here a sprawling racketeering indictment. So it's interesting strategy there. I think I'm not sure where this will go, but I didn't know if you had seen this.
No, I hadn't, but I can tell you where it's going to go.
In the trash, yeah.
Down the drain. I mean, it's the old problem. You're cruising down the highway doing 85, and in your rear view mirror you see those bubble gum flashing, and you hear the and you look around and people are going faster than you. The cop stops you. You're doing 85, young man, in a 65 zone. I'm going to give you a citation. Everybody else was speeding. Yeah, but you're the one I caught. And so I think that, prosecutors have the ability to pick and choose among whom they will charge. All they have to do is charge a person with a crime that they can prove that person committed. If others are similarly committing the crime and prosecutors choose not to prosecute them, a defense lawyer might try to raise a vindictive or selective prosecution claim. Those are notoriously difficult and routinely fail. I think that where Trump might be on promising grounds is that he is entitled to Brady information. That is, under the case of Brady versus Maryland, prosecutors in the United States have an affirmative obligation to share, even if it's not requested, exculpatory evidence. That is, evidence that tends to show a person is not guilty of the crime. And so, I hadn't seen this story, Mike, and where I thought you might be going is Trump is asking for Fannie to ask Smith for exculpatory information
For the recipe to the jalapeno poppers.
Yeah, but also we have federalism issues here. I mean, a state court judge isn't going to be ordering a federal prosecutor to do anything in a federal case anytime soon in this known universe. But there he is again. I mean, does anybody know Jack Smith on the stream? Because I mean, the guy, he really does look like he just swallowed a jalapeno pepper. Every time he looks dumbstruck. And I don't want to pick on people on the spectrum. They have lives too. But Earth to Jack, try to smile once. Life is filled with surprises. The fact that you're prosecuting Donald is one of them. Hey, I want to do a quick follow-up on the Conor McGregor piece that we did earlier in the week. We misstated the record somewhat, and I want to correct it. It doesn't destroy the point we were trying to make. Maybe it amplifies it. But apparently what led Conor McGregor to say Ireland is at war had nothing to do with discrete events involving a stabbing in Dublin. I understood that he said this after the stabbing and that people then took to the streets in violence. Apparently, McGregor said that when he learned that in a local Irish election, non-Irish citizens were going to be permitted to vote. And he then said, folks, we're at war. I mean, if we want to have a control of our community, now is the time to act. And the stabbing took place shortly thereafter. And so if we led you to believe that McGregor said the war comment after the stabbing, my bad. I only discovered that error this morning.
Well, and in fairness, though, who in the mainstream was distinguishing?
I don't care about the mainstream. If we wanted to swim with that swill, I'd have my feet up on the couch with a can of Budweiser on the Disney Channel on one thing and MSNBC on the other, and I'd be screaming, "Never Trump! Never Trump! Never Trump! Make me a slave!" I don't like Donald, as I've said before, but right now, if push came to shove and I'm in a polling place, he'd get my vote. And he'd only get my vote because I think he reflects the dis-ease and discomfort that ordinary Americans feel with being told how to live by all these unctuous creeps everywhere. And on that topic, what's up with Dan Bongino? I tried to watch Dan Bongino for a while ago. I heard the name and I listened to him for a while and I thought, wow, he's a wild man. And I listened to him a few more times and he's always a wild man. And so I guess that's his brand. He is the New York cabbie who OD'd on testosterone. Where you going? You want to get there? That's going to be $29.95. I need the cash up front. Give it to me now, and I won't let anybody get in the way. Get out of the way, you packy. Get out of the way, you towelhead. Honk, honk, honk. I love Jesus. You? Yeah. This is Dan Bongino. Buy my testosterone pills, and you could behave like a raging asshole, too. 24/7. Yeah, love you. Boop. And I got tired of it. But watch this little clip here. And it made me chuckle. And, this is obviously after the young child was criticized for his face paint at a Chiefs game, I believe it was, and accused of racism. let's take it away, Dan. Tell us how to live.
Sometimes you just got to give the double-barreled middle finger and tell cancel culture portions of liberal, leftist, socialist, communist America, you can take cancel culture in a nice ball. You can roll it up just like this, big or small, I don't really care. You can take it and you can stick it right up your ass. So this little paint job we did on my face today. Oh, look. Oh, he's got my, oh, no, he doesn't. Oh, no, he just, look at that. This is dedicated to the Karens of the world, like Karen Phillips. No offense against people named Karen. Again, my name's Dan, but I'm not taking the cancel culture bullshit anymore, and I suggest you don't either. I suggest everybody show up at every NFL game this weekend, college game as well, and page.
So I think we may, Mike, I confession to make, folks, Mike and I have great aspirations for Law and Legitimacy. We expect someday that millions of people will listen to us and say, wow, those guys were right. Where have they been all of our lives? Or more to the point, where have we been all of our lives? And to get from here to there, we'll probably have to start selling merchandise. So I don't know if there'll be trademark issues or copyright issues, but we might offer a Dan Bongino energy drink, waking up in the morning a little bit behind the 8-ball.
Little DBE, never hurt anybody.
Try the Dan Bongino energy drink, and you can go from this to what the fuck. Anyhow, let's move on. Thank you, Dan, for that moment of levity. There it is. Elon, we talked about Elon yesterday. I don't know if folks have had a chance to take a look at the full 90 minutes of his interview at the New York DealBook Summit, but boy, is it worth doing. We just touched the surface of it yesterday, where he was basically telling people GFY. That'll be the new bumper sticker. You know what it stands for. With respect to attempts to blackmail him with advertising revenue. But he continued to talk about AI deep into the interview. Mike pointed out this morning to me earlier, it was at about the 55-minute mark. And it is. And he was asked point blank about the controversy at OpenAI right now, where Altman has been forced out. And Elon's position is that something significant is likely at stake there, and that Altman, that there are those who take the view that the development of artificial intelligence is the next big thing in the evolution of consciousness, and that if humans are replaced, as it were, by super intelligent machines, oh well, it's speciesism to prefer our kind, and the development of intelligence is an end in and of itself. And there are those who feel that there should be no brakes on the development of this artificial general intelligence. Elon's not among them, but he wonders whether OpenAI has discovered something, and he suspects they have. That there's a genie about ready to come out of the box, or as he puts it, the genie's already poking its head out of the box from time to time. And he made a chilling prediction in the interview, and that is that we will see open artificial general intelligence, super intelligence, AI, basically in the position of a semi-god or godlike character in human civilization within, Mike? 3 years.
Less than 3
years. So likely the lifetime of all of you living and listening to this show, we might have a transformative event in world history. That is the development of something that can rely on data and data alone to make judgments about what's best for data and data.
Well, here's part of that, right? So I think I was telling you at around the 55-minute mark, and for everybody that maybe you don't want to have to watch the broadcast via X, it is available via podcast. I found it on Apple Podcast via DealBook's podcast channel. At about the 55-minute mark, Norm, Elon begins discussing the issue of copyright, intellectual property and copyright, and the development of artificial intelligence, these generative artificial intelligence engines. It has long been the case that copyrighted material was not being fed into these generative AI algorithms.
To claim that it's not being fed in.
Yeah. And he says explicitly that is categorically a lie. That AI is being fed copyrighted materials, and he doesn't only say that, Norm, but he also says that the lawsuits that have been filed in response to that will not be resolved before the problem manifests.
Well, I mean, I think it's naive to believe that people who are setting AI devices loose on data aren't feeding it copyrighted material. I mean, that's where most of the gold and the more meaningful stuff is. And so it was refreshing and disturbing to hear Elon be so candid about it. And it was also bracing to hear how fatalistic he is. You know, he did say, hey, look, by the time these issues are sorted out legally, or can be sorted out legally, it'll be too late. The genie will be out of the bottle, and we'll have.
He said the genie is already poking its head out right now, right? I think he said the genie's poking its head out.
But he also said, look, even if I prefer to live in interesting times, the old Chinese curse, that may you live in interesting times. I prefer to live in interesting times, even if I knew that human extinction was on the line as a result. I'd prefer to be alive and in the fight than reading about something else or playing croquet on a Victorian lawn in England somewhere. And it's not the world we've chosen, but it's the world we've got. So Elon is on the cutting edge.
One thing that I wanted to bring up, because I think I quoted this to you this morning earlier in the stream or in the broadcast, he said that life has to be about more than solving one sad problem after another. And I think that if this is within the first 30 minutes of the podcast, I really hope that younger people are hearing what he's saying. The man in the early parts of this broadcast reveals that he was too young to have been reading some of the nihilistic authors that he was reading at 12 years old.
The German philosophers were the Schopenhauer, Nietzsche. Yeah.
And he admits that he was actually saved by the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? Even though it's fiction. Obviously.
What's the answer? 42. Okay, but what's the question?
And Elon is I think a very deep guy, and he speaks in an awkward rhythm, but he's very intelligent, but also very deep and philosophically tuned. He has his own personal philosophy, right? One of curiosity and hope. And he is the one person that is visible to the public norm that has not said that the world is overpopulated. To the contrary, and I've said this on previous streams, his position is that we have a population problem because we are not birthing fast enough, right? That human civilization is on the brink of collapse because we need more people, right? And he believes in a multi-planet civilization, a multi-stellar civilization. But to hear him say things such as, that we reflect here is gratifying to me. But it means that I think you and I are tracing the correct contours of the current crisis in America and in the Western civilization norm, in that Elon is unapologetic about his success. He talks about how he has open sourced all of the technology for Tesla, right? That any of the other manufacturers are allowed to use it. They don't enforce any intellectual property rights or patent protections on any of their underlying technology. That he is inclined to help wherever possible Jeff Bezos, and encouraged, in fact, Jeff Bezos to continue trying to get his rocket propelled endeavor to work. Right. And he said, if there was a button that I could press that would mean that he would fail, I would not press that. Right. This is a man of, I think, extraordinary capability, but also a deep thinker. And he understands the issues affecting the youngest generation in America that is going to have the biggest responsibility for a very uncertain future. Right. And I think that he understands that begins in finding some level of individual purpose, a reason to get up in the morning. So him saying that life has to be more than solving one sad problem after another is a very elegant, I think, way to put our current condition.
Well, and in his saying it, in the manner in which he said it, opened my eyes in ways that they hadn't been open to before to what he's talking about when he talks about settling other planets and having a sustainable community on Mars and whatnot, or reaching into the stars. I mean, normally when I hear that stuff, I'm like, yeah, watch Star Trek. It's so far removed from the quotidian, that is the day-to-day problems of life, that I am preoccupied with. It seems like an impossible aspiration, and it'll come true if it does at all only long after I'm dead. So why care about it? And Elon's point was, life has to be more, as Mike just said, than confronting one sad situation after another. There have to be things that excite you. There have to be things that motivate you. There have to be things that inspire you and give you hope for a better future. And he's just blunt about it. life on another planet, assuring that the species doesn't go extinct by being devoted to one planet and its problems. That motivates him. And when I heard him say that, I got it. And I thought, God bless Elon Musk, and it's a much better world for having him in it. And that architecture of hope, it was I sort of viewed as a personal challenge. All criminal defense lawyers know what it is to be involved in one sad situation after another. That's called representing people. And it's easy to be dragged down into the mire by that and say, I just don't want to do it again today. I don't want to hear from another person who's devastated by the consequences of bad decisions they've made and the state's inability to understand, comprehend, or otherwise work with them. The desire to destroy the unrighteous or the unlawful is an instinct as old as civilization. And I don't want to hit the replay button. And you don't have to. Find a reason to hope. Find something larger than yourself and devote yourself to it. I do think that's the message that Augustine raises. I know, okay, tune out those of you who hate Augustine, but as it's right there in the Confessions. I'll know no hope until I find my hope in thee. And the quest for God, for immortality, for significance, the quest for hope. There's something fundamental about that, and Elon reflects it. Mike, we never got to the letter from auto dealers to Biden.
Let's do it real quick.
Yes. Yeah. What's going on here?
Well, let me preface by saying that I think we've been tracing the development of the UAW and the manufacturers' union deal, right? Their collective bargaining and the move toward EV production. And this letter that is signed by nearly 4,000 United States-based auto dealers, and I've downloaded the list of dealers. There are a number from Connecticut, Norm. There are many from North Carolina. Nearly every state, I believe, is represented in terms of what we're talking about is who's writing the letter. This is the retail sector of automaker sales, writing a letter to Joe Biden, President Biden, telling his administration that they need to back off the battery electric vehicle proposals that they are foisting upon the manufacturing sector of United States automakers. And the reason, therefore, is that auto dealers are now watching a supply glut accumulate on their lots of EV vehicles that they are not able to sell. This letter acknowledges
they able to sell them. Are they too expensive, or there no demand or appetite for them, or both?
The letter goes into several reasons, Norm. And I can scroll down and perhaps highlight some of those. But to my recollection, they cite a number of things. Inadequate infrastructure around the country, right? So charging stations at home, charging stations and availability on roads. They talk about the inability for, I guess, assured mileage or distance in extreme cold or extreme heat. They discuss the inability of accurate power metrics for hauling trailers and heavier loads. And they also cite just a general superiority of the existing market of gas-powered vehicles. Now, this letter doesn't explicitly state that. And this, I will say that this letter is very carefully crafted, in that it does not insult the president. It does not insult the idea.
What do you mean? It doesn't use words more than 3 syllables long that would require someone to read it to him?
Well, it just doesn't call him stupid and subversive, which is ultimately my problem with the entire push, the government side push for electrifying our transportation and fleet. And here domestically occurs to me as sort of an abridgment of personal liberty, right? That is that I am able to go to the gas station and put gas in a gas can, and I'm able to take that energy with me whenever, wherever, however I need to, so that I am able to operate my vehicle reliably in any circumstance. There is no equivalent for electric energy, Norm. And from someone that looks at things from that logical extreme, it is quite possible that this electric vehicle push kind of folds in hand with these 15-minute cities we continue to hear about from a development perspective all over the country, right? These sort of self-contained communities that go hand in hand with the social credit scoring and sort of containment of day-to-day life of the individual, sort of the subjugation of the individual. I don't like that. But I don't have to necessarily get there. It is all necessarily the case. And Elon brought this up in his DealBook. summit
Interview.
speech as well. Yeah, interview. The Biden administration didn't even invite Tesla to the electric vehicle summit that it had within the first 6 months of this current administration. And I think, if I recall correctly, Biden went so far as to say that Ford was leading the electric vehicle revolution, and in that quarter, Tesla delivered over 300,000 vehicles to Ford's 26. So when you compare these things and you look at the broader picture, I think this letter is very toned down. It is very logical in terms of market mechanics. The infrastructure isn't there. Buyers are not confident about them. The cars themselves are too expensive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I simply think that the problem is a little easier to point out than that, is that people don't trust that the electric thing, this sort of green energy policy push from a top-down perspective, is to be trusted. I think that's the problem.
Well, and I think you've also pointed out too, it's the loss of autonomy. I mean, you've used the metaphor before of portable energy, being able to fill a can of gas and take it wherever you want to go and do with it whatever can be done. Whereas if you've got to get your energy at a given source and use it at that source to get to that source, but yada 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 yada. The analogy I'm making sort of breaks down, but I take your point, that there's a loss of autonomy and a sense of control of the collective. I want to respond to a couple comments because it's related to this that have come up in the chat, the YouTube chat. Maury, this is apropos our discussion with Elon. What's the question? The question is, what's the question? Ermi Gyro, there's no law on Mars. Pat Clifton, if you send humans to Mars, there will be laws and crime and corruption soon thereafter. One of the things that emerges from the discussion with Elon is the notion that we'll never escape the need to make assessments of the collective good. And there always will be a tension between individual choice and determinations of the collective good. And Elon goes out of his way to remark time and again in the interview, look, he gets a bad rap. There might be 5 regulations that he's opposed to and that he fights, but he's complied with 10 million others to get there. And people don't focus on the compliance; they focus on the rejection, or they focus on the opposition. That's just the way of the world. None of us created this world. We all find ourselves in it with others who are strangers. They become lovers. They become friends. They become fellow citizens. They are fellow inhabitants of the world. And the challenge for civilization is to find a way for all of us to live together. And the rule of law is one way we do that. And so I think with respect to, going to Mars, you might have the fantasy that you can escape the problem of the one and the many, how to make a community out of many. But you won't for long, because there'll be a need for central authority, or there'll be a need for some mechanism to make rules, sort of like cryptocurrency. Money or information just wants to be free. Well, no, in the end, there are going to be regulatory problems because of what we can do to one another through the tools that we use to live together. Similarly, with this debate about cars and electric vehicles, there are environmental issues, there are energy issues. These are matters of public policy, and we do need to make decisions about, and we do, when we have made decisions. Cars are highly regulated, the roadways are highly regulated. People have to observe speed limits. Gasoline is regulated. The manner in which it's produced is regulated. How it's consumed is regulated. We've now got a new phenomenon in the marketplace called electric vehicles. And that should give to consumers and manufacturers a choice to respond to incentives in the market that they see. But the problem always, and I think we keep coming back to this in this show, the real problems of politics aren't identity and entitlement. The real problems are distribution of scarce goods and services. And the real problem is, how do we live together within maximum conditions of individual liberty? We obviously place limits on liberty. I can't decide I want to kill somebody today and do it because it feels good, at least not yet. The state's going to say, no, there are limits. And so I think with respect to cars and whatnot, there are limits as well. The question is, how does that balance get struck? And I think what the auto manufacturers are saying is, slow down. Before you seek to impose a vision of the collective good on us, make sure that the people whose good it is you're trying to concern with are bought in. They're not. And we are the retailers at the junction between supply and demand. And we're telling you it's failing, and here's why.
And this, I applaud this letter again because of its tact. And one of the things that it says in this letter is that the dealers are agnostic as to what they sell. Their job is to give the customers what they want. and that this is something that is objectively not a desire from the customer base currently, and that's all over the country. I want to again suggest some additional weekend homework here. Norm, you and I both read this article from The American Mind by Daniel J. Mahoney, Greatness Without Cruelty. I'm reminded of this article because of how we were just talking about Elon, and I'm also reminded of me bringing up Machiavelli's The Prince as well. And I'm inclined to believe that if we are to agree, Norm, that the current administration is somewhat of a hostile regime to American liberty interests, that perhaps Elon is a great conqueror, and time will tell. But I do, in the margins, think that this article by Daniel Mahoney is a great starting place for us to begin considering and conceptualizing what it means to move into the future of the United States of America without being bound to one polar end or another. Right.
Well, the essay, I mean, boy, it's quite, we could talk about this essay for hours, and maybe we will, but do read it, folks. I mean, one of the things that, those of you of a certain age who've read for decades realize the truth of the following, that popular culture follows grand intellectual culture by a century or so. So, Friedrich Nietzsche and company were talking about the will to power a century or more ago. And now everybody's a Nietzschean. And you know what? Instead of the will to power, we've got expressive individualism. And until we realize what's within us, we're not fully ourselves, whatever that means. Is there a way to avoid nihilism and to have civility and a sense of common norms? And, candidly, the Mahoney piece, I don't want to say rehabilitates, but calls attention to Alexis de Tocqueville in ways that I hadn't experienced before. I don't think of Tocqueville as an existential philosopher coping with the grand questions of being, but he did something almost as significant. He asked, what are the conditions for creating a good society? And what is it that makes Americans appear to be so unique? And what he found was there was a very active and robust sense of civic republicanism. That was different than utter collectivism, the communist approach, different than atomistic individualism. Every man is a Nietzschean will to power, but that there were core truths that bound us together. And what hooked me on the essay was the first sentence, and I'll read it to you, and then there may be 2 sentences, and then I guess we'll break for the weekend because you're going to have to go and read this essay to follow our discussions next week. We live in a time of profound spiritual and moral crisis where the old gods, among them biblical religion, sturdy and steady republican self-governance or government, liberal inquiry about the true, good, and the beautiful, monogamous marriage and sexual fidelity, freedom accompanied by salutary self-restraint, seem at once passé and moribund. The bright and energetic among the young are understandably tempted to dismiss the old verities as among the causes of our present discontents. They're dead wrong, folks. Read Mahoney. Join us next week on Law and Legitimacy, where we seek to revive an old tradition of civic republicanism and talk about the good, true, and beautiful as if these were things that have meaning, can be discovered, and have application in our lives.
That give me chills. You know where to find us. 8 a.m. Monday morning, we'll be here. Please go over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Overcast, wherever you find premium podcasts. Subscribe to it. Give us 5 stars, leave us a nice comment, or leave us alone over there. But we're welcome to the negative feedback or anything else you'd like to give us over
let's
on
talk
X.
about that for a minute. There is a site that likes to shag this place and likes to give us 1 stars, and it's called Fanatics. They follow him.
Say that one more time. You cut out.
Trolls who make their entire life out of mocking Alex and what he says. And because I am his lawyer, they like to do likewise to me. Knowledge fight. Get your heads out of your rectum and try to learn something about the broader world, and realize that when you put your lips on somebody else's exhaust pipe, all you do is suck their fumes. Bye.
See you later, Norm. See you guys on Monday. Thank you for being here. Law Pod Daily on X. Go ahead, follow, subscribe. Rumble, thank you all. Love the chat every day, even though Rumble doesn't give us nearly the traction that it should based on the metrics, but we'll address that at a different time. You guys have a great weekend. Norm, have a great weekend. See you on Monday.
Athena, let's go. I see you patiently waiting for me. Yes.